Hello and welcome to the Early Years Staff Meeting, the place where you can listen, learn and laugh with us about all things early years.
Hello.
Hi.
Welcome back.
Welcome. I'm Steph.
And I'm Sarah.
And we are the Early Years Staff Meeting.
We are the Early Years Staff Meeting. And just for our new listeners, in case we have new listeners, you never know.
we live in hope.
We do. We just want to just say that, you know, we created this podcast for you as a way of meeting the need of staff meetings.
Exactly, because we as early years teachers, we have sat in many a staff meeting.
Too many.
And we still do.
And we do have another colleague, so Keely.
Big up Keels.
Big up Keels. She's on holiday at the moment. She's on her hollybobs. So, yeah, shout out to you, Keels.
Yeah.
But she works with our SEND, doesn't she?
Yeah.
SEND children in school.
Yeah.
She used to work in early years, but she
works with different children in different year groups, but she very much brings the early years.
She does, yeah. Wherever she goes,
to what she's doing, and you'll see like a pile of toilet rolls or anything, you know, boxes, pine cones, and you'll know it belongs to Keely.
Yeah,
like she doesn't really have she's sort of a bit here, there, and everywhere.
She's a bit
at
of
the
a
school.
nomad, isn't she? So she just leaves a wake of.
She's got a cupboard, but it spills her cupboard overfloweth, and we find these little things and just know that
they belong to
Keely.
Our Keels.
Yeah.
So yeah, I hope you're having a lovely holiday, Keels.
Not jealous.
Yeah, not jealous. Okay, so last time we were here, we spoke to you about Montessori. So we're just going to do a little recap of that today. And then we are going to talk to you about writing and plugging those gaps, because we know that the data's got to be in very soon for reception. And then we're going to have our mindful moment.
Lovely.
So that is today's episode. Yeah, agenda. So off we go. So Montessori. So if you haven't listened to our episode, go and listen to it. So you'll know all about Maria Montessori and her Montessori education and her little movement that she created. But we did some research, didn't we, Steph? And we sort of had some little takeaways that we thought we would have a little try in our classrooms. So do you want to go first?
So one of the suggestions that came out from when we did our Montessori episode was when you're thinking about children and the way that they sort of resolve conflict with each other. In the Montessori approach, it's very much that, you know, the children would kind of resolve it through conversation, and one of the areas in a Montessori classroom might be something like a peace table or a peace area. And the idea would be that the children would go over to that area with an adult, and that would be where they'd have their sort of, you know, their chat, their emotion talk, their check-in, and come to some sort of resolution. So I tried to create this, recreate it rather, in a very busy British nursery with probably varying success. I've got a number of wonderful TAs that work with me in nursery, but one of my TAs is particularly creative. So I just happened to mention in passing that I was thinking of setting up this peace corner, and it was, you know, try something out for the podcast. And I literally came back the next day and she'd set it all up for me, bless her heart. So I have now got in my classroom a lovely peace corner, complete with sort of cushions and sort of books about friendship and just little sort of mindful activities the children can do when they're in the peace corner. And as I said, it's sort of been very success, because when there's a good moment, I sort of, you know, introduced the area and modelled it to the children and sort of acted it out with an adult, how we might come to the peace corner to sort of problem out for ourselves. But, you know, obviously at 3 and 4, children are still very much needing that adult to guide them to do it. So if they ever do use the peace corner, it is, you know, it would be guided by an adult. So it might be something that children have had a falling out about something, and I'll suggest, right, let's go to the peace corner, and then we can sort of take it in turns and talk about what happened and sort it out. So I think it's a lovely idea in theory, and I would like to develop it more next year, but I think I just need to sort of add it more slowly and more gradually, and really, I think, introduce it in the initial sort of when you're telling children about routines and everything, so it becomes a bit more of a routine for the adults as well as for the children, I think. So it's probably something that I will keep on plugging, but I just need to think about it a bit more carefully
for next
for
year.
It to be effective.
And I think that's probably the same with all of these things. They need to be really embedded, but it's what we're trying to say is that we can take things from these pedagogies that can really transform our provision and the way we interact with children. So as a bit of a caveat, it's not the purest form of the approach.
No, and as well, you don't want to kind of water down the message of Montessori by plucking this one thing out and saying, well, I follow Montessori because I have this in my classroom. No, what we're doing is just trying to be inspired by some of the practice and use it to develop and improve on our own practice. But there's definitely room to use that concept more, I think.
And I think so in my classroom, what I decided to do was take the resources where they tailor trays and they have specific resources for specific children in trays, and children, they're left out on shelves that are open-ended, that are accessible to children, and they would go to those shelves and they would do their inverted commas work, and then and they would choose what order they'd like to do it. So I decided I would sort of have a little go at doing that. So I had some lovely wooden trays and I chose some children. There were children who didn't really engage well in the classroom, so they were very much stuck on a specific toy or a schema. A couple of them probably, they are definitely on the send register, if you like. So I thought, to try and get them engaging more, I would make some little trays for them. And what I did was I spoke to the whole class about it, and I said, this is where they're going to live. And I showed them the it's like an old drawer unit that I'd put some wood in to make shelves. I put all these lovely trays on, and I stuck the children's faces on pictures laminated to say this was for them. But of course, the inevitable happened because I'd really highlighted it. They all wanted to play with it, and that's fair enough. And it did take a lot of managing from staff to say, no, this is for this child, they need to have their turn first and you can have a turn afterwards. One of them did have some number blocks things in, which is one of the children's sort of interests, and they loved it. They absolutely loved it, but they said it did help that those children feel really like they belonged somewhere, because I think they did find it difficult to find their little place in the classroom in terms of provision. But I think we have too many children. I mean, our classes, our 3 reception classes, we have 90 children coming in and out, and I think it's something you would have to do across all 3 of the classes, and it's an approach you'd have to really bear down on. And I think as part of getting ready for year 1, and we are going to do a transition one, aren't we? We've been asked to do some challenges for the children, and I might do those
that's
in
quite
sort of
a nice
trays.
way.
And that's coming up in the next few weeks. So I think I might not get rid of the trays because they do like them, but steer them into a different direction. But I did enjoy setting them up. They were nice. And they did look lovely. They did look very inviting. Too inviting.
Oh, well done for giving it a go. And
I know. But please, let us know if you've had a go at implementing anything, or if you've been inspired by Maria Montessori. Please let us know on socials.
We'd love to see it.
We'd love to know. Okay. Moving on.
So it is that time of year.
Dun, dun, dun. Every early years teacher's nightmare.
Unless you work in nursery, of course.
Well, yeah.
And then you have other problems. But that's for another episode.
Yeah.
Plugging those gaps at this time of year because we're getting to the data drop time.
We are.
And one of the areas where it's kind of always an area I feel in reception when it gets to this time of year, it's plugging the gaps in writing.
It is, yeah. And every year we're tracking our gaps throughout the whole of the year, and writing is always up there because, well, as we know, our curriculum doesn't really match the development of children and their physical development with their bones. They don't, they're still probably not joined. And it probably still causes a lot of pain for some children, especially younger children, the summer borns. I say tend to, you always get those odd few children that sort of buck the trend. But yeah, every year it's writing. And it's something that our school has sort of noticed, and it's something that they've wanted you and I to not fix, but to just audit what we're doing in our provision. So we have been on a few courses recently, haven't we?
Yeah.
To sort of raise the profile of writing, and it has.
It was reassuring in a way when we've been on these courses, because I feel like sometimes we're a setting where we don't want to call children away from their play. We want to value that time, and we want to limit the amount of time where we're expecting them to do something that's not purposeful, just to practice skills. And so when you go to these courses, you're almost a little bit like, oh, are they gonna think that what we do is right or wrong? And you know, we were reassured because actually the way that we do it was kind of the way that was being promoted, and all of the things that were being suggested in these courses were kind of like, well, yeah, we do that. Or if we weren't adopting them, we'd heard of it, or we had something very similar, or something like that. So we felt quite, I felt quite proud of the way we work and our beliefs and what we believe about children and how they should learn to write. So that's what we want to sort of talk to you about today. Is, you know, that was the message we heard, that it was best practice. So we kind of want to. But yeah, and then on the other end of the scale, you've got the pressure of, but you've got to get them to this level. And I don't know, should we talk about now about where we saw the exemplars of writing and what it means?
Should we talk about the early learning goal and the exemplars, and then we'll move on? So I think when you look at the early learning goal for writing, and you think about what's actually expected for the children to do that, it can be quite a very short and simple sentence. Yeah, it reads, doesn't it? I'm trying to.
Sarah's just desperately. You mean you don't have the ELG for writing on the tip of your tongue?
I try not to, because I don't overly agree with it. But hey ho, again, that's another podcast.
But things like it doesn't mention full stops or finger spaces.
No, it's write a simple sentence, isn't it?
Yeah, a phrase or sentence, isn't it? To write a phrase or sentence that can be read by another adult.
Yeah.
It's about forming letters mostly correctly, which is probably the most controversial one.
I think so, yeah.
Because
I think it's the one that I think the word phrase causes people a bit of jip, should we say?
Yeah.
And then I'm desperately trying to find it. There you go.
She's found it.
I've found it.
We're always well prepared.
Well, yeah. Okay, so the descriptor is: write recognisable letters, most of which are correctly formed. Spell words by identifying sounds in them and representing the sounds with a letter or letters. And write simple phrases, even simpler than that.
Yeah.
It literally could be like a label for their model.
Yeah.
And we looked at the example, didn't we, from the exemplar material, which was "Don't touch," and it had her name.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was to say "Don't touch my model," because she'd finished building something, obviously, and she'd written something for purpose.
And I think the key was she'd written it independently.
She'd
written it, you know, not because she'd been it been dictated to her.
No.
Or
come and do this special job.
Yeah.
Or during phonics, that kind of thing. It had a purpose. She didn't want anyone to touch her model because she'd obviously spent a long time doing it. And she wrote her own little label with her name, which is really important and really powerful. And she put it with her model. And I think, you know...
it's part of the picture, isn't it?
Yeah,
so
of course.
You're not going to look at one piece of writing and decide whether that child's working to the ELG or not. It would be, you know, you would take into consideration, like, how do they get on in, you know, how do they get on in phonics lessons when they're writing on whiteboards? How do they
they're
get
blending
on?
their readings. That's really important.
So you would kind of look at the whole picture, but it is also a best fit. So if you've got a child that has got, you know, not completely what you'd say most letters?
It's most letters, yeah. I mean...
It's very... Well, it's vague, isn't it?
It is, but they're all vague.
And I also think that's quite a hard expectation, depending on what your phonics scheme is. Because at what point in the curriculum would you have time? Would you be able to teach children how to form the letters correctly, unless your phonics program is quite prescriptive about that? Unless you're pulling them out to do other things. So,
and like, as you know, we found that phonics schemes, they have their own agenda and they do expect that you're teaching phonics all day long. And actually,
we do other things.
We do actually teach other things, funnily enough. But, you know, at the end of the day, it's your judgment call on what that looks like. But, you know, I think if you can read it and, you know, the letters are well formed and you kind of can see, you know, that is a p or a t, and you know it's easily readable, I'd say go for it.
And I suppose you just have to think as well, like, are they going to get on in year one? Are they going to be able to, like, they're going to be expected to be able to write a sentence in a lot more different contexts?
They are,
so are they going to be able to just give it a go phonetically?
And like you've just said, give it a go. It's those characteristics of effective learning. Do they have most of those? Are they going to have all of those learning behaviours to, as you say, get
absolutely.
On with it in year one?
Because I think writing is so much about resilience as well.
Oh, definitely.
And we've all been there with the children that as soon as they make a tiny error, they either scribble it out, rub it out and throw it away.
Get very upset.
So it's hard. It is hard. So it's, you're absolutely right what you say there about them needing those characteristics to be able to sort of meet that goal. But what we did then was we had a look at our provision, didn't we? I don't know if should we talk about the provision first?
Yeah.
Because that was kind of our first.
Yeah. So how it was before we did the course, we in reception, we did have like writing areas, but we would call them message centres. And we did have writing, I would say it was sporadic throughout the whole provision. I think it probably started off in September. Very
I'd say it's absolutely.
And then as the year's gone off, it probably, as you know, in schools, it's resources, it's money, isn't it? But I'd say outside was probably not so great.
Yeah.
Inside was much better, but
I think we just lost a bit of what the magic that we'd had in previous years.
I agree.
And it had, just little things had sort of stopped happening that were happening before.
It's those juggling plates, isn't it? There's so much to think of and so much you want to get right. You just can't. You literally can't do it all. And every year something drops, and that's your target, isn't it, for the next year?
Yeah. Always. Yeah, and I think as well, where we've had like we had a couple of cohorts where we've had really high PSED needs.
Yeah.
And sort of managing emotions and self-regulation, that the writing has kind of dropped a little bit because it's kind of like the icing on the cake, isn't it?
Yeah.
So like you say, they have to be in a place to learn before they can do any learning.
They do.
So perhaps that might have been why. But we just had a little a recce, didn't we, in a thing, and we just sort of put writing back in.
Yeah,
and it was quite easy to do.
It was.
You just need to maintain it.
You do.
Yeah.
You do. So I literally got down on my knees and looked and was like, from where I'm standing at this height, can I access writing? And actually, in some of the classrooms, you couldn't. And children are lazy.
Yeah.
They don't want to walk from one end of the classroom to the other to go and get something to bring it back, because they don't want to stop their play. They don't think that way. So, you know, if it's not right in front of them, they're never going to do it. So that's how I thought. So I was like raiding the cupboards.
So you just want something in grabbing distance, sort of mark making.
Yeah, like literally a grab box.
And a 4-year-old grab at that.
Exactly. So that's what I did. I literally made some grab boxes, you know, just got some cans of beans and tipped them out and did the safe top. Yeah. And filled them all with pencils and anything we had, basically.
And we use a lot of like caddies, don't we?
Yeah, like the cleaning caddies.
Cleaning caddies.
Yeah.
And we just fill them with paper, with clipboards, with exercise books that, you know, the rest of the school used to use. And there's a big stack of them given to early years. We'll use them. What
bits
other
of paper,
things
coloured
do we do?
paper, line paper, square paper, anything really.
And then we also added our phonics sound mats, and it's ideal to have we have name dictionaries, don't we, which are good for the children when they're learning to write their name. And I know we used to have them in all of our little grab and go boxes to go outside, and
it also has staff names. Well, my ones do, because they do like to write messages.
Yeah, they
to
do.
You all the time. So. Yeah, and they just grab the name dictionaries and they can see the person's picture and they'll know that that's their name, and then they just sort of copy it when they're writing cards and letters and messages and all sorts of things. So, I mean, I've even seen where some children can't write their names, and children who can write are flicking through the dictionary to write the child's name for them. Yeah. So that...
Yeah. And that's modelling, isn't it? It's modelling, writing for a purpose.
And I love that. It's so cute.
Yeah. And that is something that I think came up in our course, and we were like, oh, I don't know if we do that so much, which is writing for a purpose in front of the children, so that you're modelling that writing. We're quite often modelling writing, but not for using it for a personal use.
No, it's for like handwriting usually, isn't it? Or during phonics.
Modelling a sentence.
So it's, as you say, it's not in a purposeful way.
So for example, the other week, my children were really into superheroes, so we wanted to make a superhero role play area, and we thought about what we could have, and I modelled writing a list and just wrote it with them, and then some of the children came over to help me set it all up, and while we were doing it, we were looking on the list. See, you know, I was reading it and modelling, like, oh, let's tick that one off, and children were like crossing it out to show that we'd done it. Yeah. So it's just making the most of those kind of opportunities, isn't it?
The other one that's quite powerful, we have sign-up sheets. Yep. So if they want to go on the board, or they want to do some cooking, or literally anything where they have to queue and wait their turn, we have these little sign-up sheets, and they're literally numbers 1 to 10 with a line and back to front, and they just sign their name on the line, and that is the order. It's like a queuing system, a writing like queuing system, and then they go away, and then they get called when it's their turn, and they tick themselves off. Yeah. But that is so... I hadn't realised how super purposeful that is, and how powerful
and motivating.
That is. Of course it is. And those children soon learn to write their name because they're desperate. They want to do the activity. So
that's one that's used in reception sort of at the beginning of the year, and in nursery about now, because we're kind of we're trying to get them ready, reception ready.
The other thing we did was, instead of like self-registration, instead of like them moving a counter with their name on, we had a sign-in book, a visitor's book, and they'd come in and they'd sign their name in this visitor's book, and I would take the visitor's book and go, right, let's see who's here today, who signed in, and I'd have to try and decipher some of the words, but that was really purposeful because they were saying, I'm here, in their own way. Some of them could write their names, and some of them,
which is so much nicer than saying to children when they come in, right, just come and write your name before you can go and play.
Yeah, exactly.
It's more purposeful, isn't it?
Yeah. And we in the classroom where we have all of the construction, they do have little labels, so they can write their names for pieces that are sort of under construction and not quite finished, or would they have like a viewing area where they can show off something they've made, and it will say what it is, and it will say their name, a bit like the don't touch label from earlier. But I think that in that classroom, that's very powerful. But it's bringing more of that, I think, into every classroom that we have, and into every area. And a few years ago, when we did a lot of cooking, I used to get children to write a little slip to say what they wanted to cook, and who it was. And because we did the Anna Epgrave penny system, where, if you don't know, it's where they have 10 pennies every day, and then they would use their money to pay for things in the provision. So cooking was one of those areas, and they would then write how much money they were going to pay for it. And so it's all very purposeful. And I would take the ticket. Yes, it is the 3 M's. Mr. Greg Bottrell, we'll move on to him very shortly. And I would literally take the ticket like you would in a restaurant and say, right, well, we've got Billy wants to make I think it says pizza, and then off we go. We'd and they'd already been pre-taught those pizza cooking skills. But and
we need to bring that back, because
we do.
It's amazing.
I think what you forget is with every year group, they all bring their, the joys, but they also bring their challenges. And every year you forget what you did the previous year, because your whole world is consumed by the here and the now. And I think that is probably one of the downsides of child-led, is you forget what you did before, because it's all tailoring to the now. So I think we do need to bring that back.
That'd be an episode for the future. More cooking. So do you want to go on to talk about Mr. Greg Bottrell now?
Okay, so I feel as though we've not really spoke about him on the podcast.
No, but I feel like if we did talk about it, he might interact, because he's pretty sort of hot on social media, isn't he?
He is. Now, if you don't know who he is an amazing person who is all about making sure that children are not robots. That's his sort of tagline. And he's a very passionate person, and he's not just about writing, although he is famous for Drawing Club, but if you do know him and you follow him on socials, he is all just about imaginative, creative,
joy of childhood
and play. So he has got a few books. One of them's called Can I Come and Play Now?
Can I go and play now?
Can I go and play now? Little plug there for you, Greg.
So plug us right back. We're right up your street. We're your play people.
In that book, he talks about the 3 M's.
Yeah.
So every time you interact with a child, it's in the back of your mind. You need to think about adding in some mathematics, some mark making, and then making conversation. Yeah. And I think he calls it the secret M. Is it making it imaginative or something like that? So it's really creative, and he is quite an out there person. Yeah. You probably won't mind me saying that, not that I know him, but he is most known for Drawing Club. And I have to say, I hadn't actually done the Drawing Club training until about March this year. Another colleague had, so we were kind of using its like second-hand knowledge. And unless you've been on the course, you're not inspired in the same way. And as much as I love my colleague, and she'll know who she is if she's listening, it's just not the same. So if you do get the chance to do his training, I do say it is inspiring, and it's really cheap. It's about £30 for a course, like an hour's session, and it has changed our outlook on writing, I think, and our children have been inspired by Drawing Club. So if you don't know what Drawing Club is, it is basically giving children the purpose to write every day if you want it to. It's not a scheme. He's very much, this is not a scheme, but this is a way of thinking. So he would have like a stimulus, whether it's a story or a traditional tale, or whether you use a prop story, or even he uses little cartoons.
But he likes his 80s,
he does,
cartoon,
80s,
like really
90s cartoons.
random things like the Raggy Dolls and things like that.
He does. So he is quite retro, but what he explained that in the course, he said it's about igniting imagination. And if you were to use the stimulus of Bluey or things that they watch every day, it's not new and it's not exciting, and they know what the end of the story is going to be. They know what how they fix the problem, so it doesn't create that imaginative process. And also, from what I've realised, all my childhood programs they're very slow. The language is so much more advanced than what our children's television programs are, and they're quieter, so you're so much more focused on things. And yes, the animation's not as good, but actually you can forget about all of that.
I don't think we
watch
minded
it.
though in our day, did we?
Not at all. So one of the stimuluses we did use was Trapdoor.
Yes, a classic.
Don't look inside that trapdoor. And it was a bit scary.
Yeah.
But they liked it. The children really responded to it. So what we do is, before you do the stimulus, it's about vocabulary. So you have a set list of vocabulary that you choose. And it's not the same as in the book, because the idea is that you're, as he says, sprinkling vocabulary throughout your day and your time during Drawing Club. And it's about extending their vocabulary. So you would look at the words that they have in the story or in the in the video, and then you would look at synonyms and add those in. And every day you would start off by going through those vocabulary and doing it in a very Amdram way, enacting those words out. Then you'd watch the story or read the story, and then you would be given, so the adult would model then creating their own, either a character or a setting or a problem, an answer to a problem that you've created. So say like it was Trapdoor, you would then draw, the first thing you would do is draw your own monster. So you wouldn't draw the monster from Trapdoor, you'd creatively think of your own monster. So you never want to be copying or mimicking, you always want to be extending their creativity and their imagination. And from that you would have sentences and code words and code numbers, and when you press all of those things, amazing things would happen. And there is no ceiling on your imagination, it's just wherever you want.
The children would be encouraged to write sort of a word or a sentence that would contain like your target. Is that right?
So if it was, so I'd drawn my monster, and then my code word could be, I don't know, eggy bread.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to link to anything, but I've modelled writing eggy bread, and I've said when I press my code words, the monster turns into, I don't know, Mickey Mouse. It can be anything. It doesn't...
Nothing to do with eggy bread.
Nothing with eggy... No, it doesn't have to do with it. It can do if you want to. It's your imagination. And then within that you would sprinkle some maths. So in my monster it might have 3 arms on one side and it might have 2 arms on the other side. So I might do the number 5, and then I would explain that as I was drawing. And then when I press the number 5, perhaps he then has 5 legs that pop out instead of having 2. So again, it's having the words actually have a purpose. They do something in your imagination, and that is what has captivated the children. So well done, Greg.
It's captivated the teachers as well.
It has. It really has. And me and a colleague, we did go on the training, and it was literally only an hour. But afterwards, it was just like, I want to write, I want to draw. And the children, they loved it. They still love it. We're doing it still every day. And we do it every morning. And before the children have gone off to do, their choosing, we would say, anyone wants to do drawing club? And you would have like a flock of children come and sit with you, and they would do their drawing club for the day.
So what about those reluctant writers, the ones that are not too fussed?
So we would just keep a little check of who has done drawing club. And then the reluctant writers, you would say, right, so-and-so, Bob, you haven't done it this week. I'd really like it if you could come and join me now. And before they've done any play choosing, they would come and do it.
So they're not interrupting what they're doing.
No, so because we really don't want to interrupt their play at all. And then they'd spend 5 minutes and they do it. And actually, we haven't had any pushback from any children. They like it because they do it with you.
Yeah,
and they just
like
want
being
to
part
help.
of a club.
Of course they do. Yeah, they do like being part of a club.
Who doesn't?
And actually, yeah, we haven't had any pushback. They like having that time with you just to talk about their drawings and talk about their imagination. And we're not correcting them, so as per se, we might say, oh, actually, today's secret code word is a rhyming couplet, so you haven't done your rhyming couplet, so you need to add it, otherwise it's not going to work.
Yeah.
And they'll go, oh, okay, and they'll quickly add it on. And then,
but I like the way that you're able to this is something I didn't realise, just the way you're able to target what you're learning, or address a misconception. So if you did phonics the day before and the children really didn't understand your trigraph, which is the worst one, let's face it, you could have a word, your code word or your code sentence would have to have that, could have that in them, that sound in there. Yeah. And
actually the children, they wouldn't know that you've made the link there.
No.
And that they wouldn't know that they're actually practicing writing the U sound, but they would just do it.
And the same with maths. You could like take a concept like odd and even and say, my monster's going to have like an odd number of legs, and that's the magic code today.
So my children absolutely love counting in tens from drawing club, and it's not something I've ever really touched on with them, but they could see that the sequence had jumps of 10, and they loved that it got to 100, and they were like, and so now they just love singing it. And that stemmed from drawing club.
Yeah.
So I love it, but I think we're not going to be doing it every day when we come back, but we did do it every day just to sort of embed the routine of it. But it has definitely...
Do you think that's helped you to plug those gaps?
Definitely, because we're not forcing children. If children really don't want to do it, they don't want to do it, and we would never force them. But as I've said, children willingly do want to come, and they love that time with you, and they love being silly. And it's probably the first time that I've felt that I've really got at their level with the silliness and the imagination. And some really, funny things have come out of it. And their writing has been phenomenal. And children will sometimes just sit and they'll do their drawing club and say, oh, can I do some more? And I'm like, yeah, go for it. And they'll just carry it on.
That's the joy, isn't it? Because sometimes, we get so caught up in all the pressures and everything that you just forget to be silly with the children and just have fun together.
And it is fun. And I think that's what sticks in their memories most, is the fun, not that you've pulled them over to come and practice the tricky words for the week or whatever. So,
and actually, even though I used earlier the phrase reluctant writer, I actually hate that phrase.
Yeah, I know.
Because actually it's not the writer's fault if they don't want to write. It's you haven't made it tempting enough.
Provision.
It's the lackluster motivation that we've offered them. So actually, if you motivate children with the desire to write, and you give them enough purpose, you give them enough space to do it wherever they want to, whether that's chalking on the floor or You know, writing. I mean, the other day the children got a bit carried away because we had some lovely paint on I think it was wet, quite a wet day, so we had the block paints out on, and we love getting these out on a wet day because children just we've got like a hill and they like to paint and watch the colours sort of float down and make like little rainbow rivers and things. And some of the children got carried away and started writing on one of the white walls outside the classroom, and then we all kind of had a little like, is this okay? And it was like, well, it doesn't look the best, but actually, like, the children are writing.
Of course they are.
They're writing. So in the end, it got vetoed and we had to watch it off. But I think it was one of those things where actually, you know, they were writing, so you couldn't really tell them off.
What did they write?
I can't even remember. I think it was like just sounds and numbers. It was kind of like random things,
sort of
rather than like a sentence. But yeah, it did make me chuckle, and we all had a bit of a chat about it. But in the end, the sponges and the buckets came out, and some of the children developed their fine motor skills, their gross motor muscles by scrubbing it off. But there we go.
Oh, wow. I would have been, you know, I hate them white walls.
I know, it wasn't not the best design.
No, they're not. Mm-hmm. Okay, so do you want to go on to story scribing? Just touch on that.
Yeah, so another strategy that we use, and we use it through something called helicopter stories, which again is I actually off the top of my head can't remember the name of the lady, but I will find out what it was and what it is. And she's these are the people that do the poetry basket, which we've used in nursery this year. And basically it is giving children sort of the props and the imagination to tell a story, and then you scribe that story for them. So it's almost like you become the writer for their ideas. So you are scribing. Trisha Lee, that's it. Sorry, Trisha.
Yeah.
And her book is called Princesses, Dragons and Helicopter Stories.
Yeah, that's her first book.
And if you wanted to look up like helicopter stories on the website, there's lots more information about it. But yeah, it's story scribing is just basically, it's that, isn't it? It's just telling for the children to tell a story and you write it down, and it's sort of the preciousness of their words. So if their story is car goes bang, boom, you write that down and you show respect for their words. And then the more you do it, and the more you sort of model it and act out, and because then the sort of second part of the helicopter stories is then to act out the story. So the children tell the story, and then you mark out a stage area, and the children then the teacher will read the story, and the children sort of act out the story. And the more you do that, and the more they see it, you sort of see the progress in the scribing. So it's sort of almost like
and also their vocabulary.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. And things like story language develop. So it's almost like when they don't have the sophistication to write those things, because, you know, it would be too long for them to write, even if they've got the phonics. It might be too long and tiresome for some children. It's kind of like their oracy and their vocabulary and the way they can tell a story is far ahead of what they could actually physically write. So it's allowing them to develop that alongside that, and then eventually as children become more confident, you can kind of co-scribe the story together. So it might be well, you have a go at writing cat, you know, in the story, and then as the year goes on, you could build up to obviously the children then just being more confident to write their own stories. So that's another little strategy that we use. But yeah, if you want to find out more about that, Google it.
And I just think, you know, children are watching us model for a purpose. Again, it's not the handwriting. Quite often it's me just scribbling really quickly. I've got a long queue of children that are desperate to tell me their stories. So, you know, my handwriting isn't, I'm going to hold my hands up, it isn't always perfect, but they don't care. They just
the only people that seem to care about handwriting is the government.
And the phonics schemes.
Because let's face it, in real life, I've got the most hideous handwriting.
I know, so have I. It's like a doctor's handwriting.
Not my teacher writing on the board. That's quite legible, but my real life handwriting is a scrawl.
Yeah.
But anyway, quite political today.
Yeah. Is it because we're having a change of government
maybe
soon?
Well, let's keep open-minded about that, because we're not meant to show political.
So we're going to show political views.
No.
I don't even know what mine is at the minute, so I'm a bit. Anyway,
right. After that, are we ready to move on to our mindful?
Yeah. Should we have a little chill moment after talking about writing? So, if you have any ideas, or if you'd like to tell us, what you're doing in your settings to plug those gaps in a child-led way, then, please contact us we've got TikTok, we've got Instagram. So just search for the Early Years Staff Meeting and we pop up. We'd love to know. Okay, are we ready?
Yeah.
Mindful moment.
Okay, so this week for our mindful moment, I'm going to explore something that is a strength of yours, Sarah, and a weakness of mine.
Oh.
But it is something that
Cooking?
I've tried. Could have picked cooking. I mean, cooking I'm not so bad. It's more baking.
Okay. Yeah.
It is getting outside and planting and gardening and growing is the mindful moment for today, because I think you can do this, in a school context. And as you know, I'm very proud because I've managed to grow some radishes. With my class this year, we've tried to grow a few things, and all of them have had to go to the big recycling compost bin in the sky. But these radishes, they grew, and so with the children, we obviously planted. We were doing the enormous turnip basically, and I looked for your advice, and
turnips were taking too long.
You said it would have taken too long, so why don't we do radishes, because they're basically like mini turnips. And so we planted some radish seeds. And it's just a very wholesome activity, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Very good for the mind, very good for the soul. Anything to do with nature and getting outside, I feel, is good for the soul. So that would be my tip for the week, is to
just be outside and
get some green fingers.
Yeah.
I need to do it in my own garden now.
Wow. Should we just tell the listeners that we are in a different space today?
We've upgraded.
We've
made it.
So we're not in our little hovel of an art cupboard anymore.
No.
We're not hunched over a little table on a little chair. No longer. No. We're currently in a log cabin.
I know.
At my parents' house. So shout out to my parents. They don't listen, but and I'm looking outside and I can see about 20 spare tomato plants. So if you want to take a couple of tomato plants on your way out,
maybe I will. I mean, if they want to die, they can come with me. I don't have much luck, but I feel like I just need to embrace it a bit more, and I feel that. You do a lot of gardening with the children, and I think you get a lot out of it, and I do aspire to be.
I think
better.
Well, as you see, like my parents have their own allotment everywhere, and they've always grown their own food and plants ever since I was little, and so that's just something that I just only know. So I suppose that's something I wanted to give back to the children, is growing. And we're in that current climate where there is food shortages. And our food isn't particularly healthy, so and it is cheap to grow your own food. And it's about that slow learning.
You can even use old food, can't you?
You can, yeah.
So I did this thing where I haven't planted it yet. Where you get a strawberry and you wait for all the seeds to drop off.
Yeah.
And then they're basically strawberry seeds.
Yeah.
So it's free.
Yeah. Also, when you buy the big celery. Yeah. And you cut them all off, don't you? And you're left with that stump.
Yeah.
You just plant that and they regrow.
I mean, it's just incredible. It just blows my mind.
It just regrows. Same with
Yeah.
lettuce. That, you know, the hard bit of a lettuce, you just replant that.
Yeah.
Grows. So, but these are all things we need to be teaching our children.
Absolutely. Because if somebody had taught me all these things, maybe I wouldn't be so hopeless.
Yeah, but it's just practice, isn't it? It's that trial and error. But, you know, if you know, if it doesn't grow, it's just the cost of a packet of seeds, which is like a couple of pounds.
Yeah.
Whereas, you know, our food, especially healthy food, is really expensive. And a lot of our vulnerable families don't always access it. So it's really vital. So get out in your garden, even if you only have a little window box.
Absolutely. Right, well, I think that on that happy note,
We'll see you next time.
See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.